Phoneybeetlemaniacxs here, and I'm with you once again. This is going to be a response to CapriciousSBlackBox's video, account number 1. Now, I'm not using this video, I'm going to respond to the audio. It's just because, just in case, he doesn't want me to use his image or his videos, whatever. I am going to use his audio because I can do so, because of fair use clauses, so here we go.
Hi YouTube. I wanted to expand on a couple of the points that I made in my last video, where I was discussing the recent debate between Bill Nye and Ken Ham, and specifically a couple of the comments.
I suppose I have to use this moment to tell you what I thought of that. The Ken Bill Nye debate. It was what I expected, really, that Bill Nye would present evidence, and Ken Ham would stick to his fundamentalist understanding of Genesis. What people expect me to say, it was exactly what I thought it was going to be. So let's continue.
Comments I'd received as well. I got some great comments on that video, but most notably from Karen S. and from Ozzy. And I really liked the way Ozzy encapsulated the point that I was making about Ken Ham saying to Bill Nye, you can't account for the uniformity of nature, but then by necessity having to abandon the uniformity of nature to make certain points of scriptural accounts and that sort of thing. And as Ozzy put it, you can't have your uniformity of nature and eat it too.
Well, you could have suspensions of things. Again, nature can be uniform, but you can have a suspension of that uniformity to have miracles. And if miracles happen, then they're not ununiform. They're just a part of nature that we can't display at this current moment.
I thought that was really great. Karen S. had responded with a couple of comments as well, and I'm paraphrasing a bit here, but she basically said that in her self-education of the presuppositional apologetics, she's come to have, I think, some disdain for this whole notion that we as atheists need to account for things like the laws of logic, the uniformity of nature, and morality.
As a presuppositionalist, I think that's a correct position to hold, because we all can't account for those things. We have to use presuppositions to get to that point. I'm definitely presuppositionalist in that I think that everything we should believe that what we presuppose is based upon evidence and based upon different things that we presuppose are correct, like that we know ourselves, that we know what is good, what is evil, based upon certain outgoing factors. And it's not just atheists who have to presuppose these things. Theists and other people around the world have to presuppose that what they're doing is good and correct, and that they're using logic and reason to define those various things. So it's not just an atheist thing. Presuppositionalism is about all worldviews accounting for what they consider to be right and honest. So right away I'm wondering what kind of presuppositionalism this is tackling. It's not the presuppositionalism I particularly hold to.
And she basically had said that I think we can reject that there's any need to account for these things. And I would add,
we can't reject that because it's a necessary part of life that we have to presuppose that our logic and our reasoning is invalid, because they could be.
We're talking to presuppositionalists after all.
I'm a presuppositionalist.
And she went further to say that we really should challenge them to show why this would be value added.
Because everything's value added. You're presupposing a lot of things in your everyday life. You're presupposing that you exist. You're presupposing that you're called CapriciousBlackBox. You're presupposing that you live in America. I suppose you live in Canada. I don't know which one. You're presupposing that you do whatever job you do. You're presupposing that the world will continue to exist. You're presupposing that gravity will keep you under the sun. You're presupposing a lot of things in your life. Those are evidentiary presuppositionalisms. So again, saying that presuppositionalism is value added, we add value every day. There you go.
Why there would be any benefit in the here and now to accounting for these things. And I think that's an interesting point. And it does get me to the points that I wanted to expand on. So in my video, I did make that point that Ken Ham was using a little bit of presuppositional apologetics in the debate, where he said to Bill Nye, you can't account for the uniformity of nature. By extension, he was saying that he can. But again,
Yeah, I agree with that. That was a poor argument, and that's not presuppositional apologetics. That's fundamentalist, Bible-based apologetics that has no basis in presuppositionalism.
He's from the camp that puts forward the only suspensions, the only interruptions in the uniformity of nature in certain scriptural accounts.
But if they're part of nature, then they wouldn't be uniform. They'd just be part of nature that we can't understand at this current moment in time. They could actually be part of nature that we could come to understand, like, for example, the way we've come to understand how we can restart, how somebody can be brought back to life, let's say, when they have death in some sort of meaningful way. We get to a part where we can actively insert babies into one, so that would be science as we understand it now. To somebody 2,000 years ago, that might be miraculous. Let's continue.
Celestial events, miracles, I would argue revelation, end time prophecy, and that sort of thing are rife with suspensions of the uniformity of nature. And of course, this is an abandonment because as soon as you have an interruption in something uniform.
But if those things happen, they're part of nature. They're just part of nature. We can't understand them at the moment.
It's no longer uniform. And this can be said for pretty much everything that they say that we as atheists or naturalists need to account for. So logic, reason, and rationality, or morality. In the case of morality, they'll say that we can't account for morality.
Again, I don't say that. I say that morality, as in good and evil, don't really exist in the non-believer worldview, as Nietzsche said in his work, that they are meaningless concepts because you only have correct and incorrect based upon the arbitrary method that your society lives in. Therefore, it can only be correct and incorrect behaviour, not good and evil.
A worldview doesn't account for it, that their worldview does, and they have the only basis for it.
It's not the only basis for it, it's just that good and evils are meaningless concepts in the non-believer worldview, as Nietzsche proposed in his work. If you want to say why Nietzsche's wrong, I'm willing to hear it.
But then they'll turn around and act immorally. With impunity, it seems.
Some people do act immorally with impunity who call themselves believers. I don't disagree with that.
So they'll, put a bunch of up thumbs from their own sock accounts on a comment they've made to give it the appearance of more support than it actually has. This is deceptive.
That usually gets more people to see it if you've uploaded it, because of the brilliant way that YouTube has decided to do its subscription box is that it disappears from people's subscription box. So the only way you can get to it is to put it in your feed by liking it or something like that. Or sharing it on your own feed. That's unfortunately a necessity. So I don't think it's necessarily a dishonest behaviour, but the necessity of getting your work seen by as many people as possible.
And, of course, it's immoral to deceive one another.
It's not to be deceptive, it's a necessity of how YouTube's mechanics currently work.
If you were to press them on it, or press someone else on something similar, they might say something like, well, I know I did that bad thing, but I have this Savior, I have salvation.
That's not bad behaviour. That's just sharing your video. I mean, I'm sure there's ways. There's more honest ways to share it. Like, for example, you can press the share button. But I wouldn't say it's dishonest because maybe they're not aware of what the share button does, or maybe they're not aware that you can share your video by like Facebook or Google Plus or whatever by not doing that. And I think that they should look into those. But that's just my personal point of view by like doing a Tumblr or something. Anyway, continue.
And I think that's a little bit dangerous. Now, you could set that aside as personal behavior of one person, that's fine, but the theology actually is even worse. Because essentially what it says is, listen, here's a list of rules. If you abide by these rules, you're acting morally. If you break these rules, you are being immoral. But oh, by the way, you are born completely sinful.
Which theology is this? It's not theology I abide by, and I think most people in the world don't buy. The theology behind that is that we're not born sinful, we're born with the capacity to sin. But again, because of the sacrifice on the cross, we know we can overcome that. It's more about being the way a car operates, using the car analogy, because one's behind you, or the brake and the accelerator and the clutch.
So you actually cannot be moral. It's impossible for you to be moral.
It's not impossible for you to be moral under Christian doctrine.
So essentially they're putting forth morality as the concept, but by necessity abandoning it. And the same goes for reason and rationality. They may say they have the only basis for it, but then they abandon it, as was evidenced in the debate, with the one big question that everyone loved so much. What would change your mind? Bill Nye said evidence. Ken Ham said nothing would change his mind. Well, that's irrational, isn't it?
I'd agree that was stupid for him to say so, and I wouldn't say it's irrational, it was just stupid. I think any reasonable person would say, if someone asked me, I don't know. Because if something could change my mind, I would have changed my mind. And I think that's the only honest answer somebody can give. Is that they don't know. And that's the only answer I give. I don't know. That's the only answer I can think of.
It's a little bit irrational to say that you will hold a belief set regardless of evidence to the contrary, regardless of any and all evidence to the contrary. This is the essence of irrationality. So, essentially, again, they've abandoned it. And I don't much care to have to account for these things when I'm talking with someone who abandons them anyway. Now, another thing I was thinking about was the whole concept of intellectual courtesy as it relates to this whole term presupposition and the evolution of it here on YouTube. Early on, we had people adopting the presuppositional apologetic and bringing it to YouTube. And a lot of atheists said, hey, you can't presuppose that Scripture is accurate and that everything flows from there. And theists took a lot of heat for that. Eventually, they...
I'm a presuppositionalist and I never heard a word about it. I presuppose that my interpretation of Scripture is correct, and the people that I'm reading have interpreted it correctly as well. I've done my own study, I've done my own cross-reading on the subject, so I'm presupposing that my educational level and comprehension level is up to snuff with what I'm comprehending and reading. That's called evidentiary presuppositionalism.
Responded by saying, well, you atheists have presuppositions too.
That's true, you do. You're presupposing that you know what the truth is. We all do it. It's called evidentiary presuppositionalism. You're basing your presuppositions based upon the evidence presented to you. That's what theists are doing as well.
And that was met with a lot of friction. A lot of atheists rejected that vehemently, and I think I kind of understand why. I think it is understandable. The presuppositions simply aren't the same. And
they are the same. You're presupposing that what you're interpreting is correct. You're interpreting information correctly. Again, I admit I'm a presuppositionalist. We all are presuppositionalists. We're just presuppositionalists to maybe different degrees, but we are all presuppositionalists.
This again was evidenced by the big question during the debate. One person said their mind could be changed by evidence. The other person said nothing would change their mind. So
yeah, but Ken Ham doesn't speak for me. Again, I don't know what would change my mind because I can't base my opinion based upon a hypothetical. If somebody could show me that a God is impossible, then I would have no choice but to change my mind.
Bill Nye's presuppositions are slave to the evidence, if you will. Ken Ham's presuppositions are dogmatic. He will
yeah, I'd agree with that.
Hold them no matter what. So they're clearly not the same. I can understand people not wanting to be painted with that same brush. But what's interesting is the evolution of the term. So presuppositional apologetics comes to YouTube. Atheists say you can't have presuppositions. Theists say you guys got presuppositions too, but then they won't grant them the same respect.
I grant anybody's respect for to hold their opinion as long as they do the same for me. It's called mutual respect. Because otherwise no discussion is possible. Again, I try and respect the person even if I don't respect the opinion.
And so intellectual courtesy would dictate that if you're going to come to a discussion and say, listen, I've got some assumptions, I'd like you to respect my assumptions. In fact, I may even demand that you grant my assumptions, that you reciprocate that, right? It doesn't do you much good to come to a discussion and say, listen, I've got these assumptions. I may even demand that you grant my assumptions, but I'm not going to grant yours. I'm going to label you as having them. I'm going to point out that you have them, but I'm not going to level the same courtesy to you that I'm asking for myself. And I think this highlights, again, the dishonesty, the intellectual dishonesty of the presuppositional apologetic as it's put forth here on YouTube. And it's...
I'm a presuppositionalist, and I've put many times, and I am on YouTube. I did about 3 videos in which I talked about my presuppositionalism. I even did a meeting of the minds where I talked about my presuppositionalism. So saying that I haven't presented my case on YouTube is baloney.
It stifles the conversation. It stymies the conversation. We can't get to any kind of meaningful discussions when there's dishonesty afoot. Right?
How am I doing dishonest?
Dishonest to say, listen, I want you to respect my presuppositions, but I'm just going to outright reject yours and demand that you...
I don't outright reject atheist presuppositions. I just don't agree with them.
Account for them. You don't get to have presuppositions, is essentially what we're being told.
No, it's not that. It's just that I just want to understand what your presuppositions are based upon. You know, the same reason that I would give what my presuppositions are based upon, so that we can go closer to discussing each other and understanding where each other's coming from, because maybe we're coming from things from different points of view.
So, just a couple of interesting points, and I have a personal message for Matt Dillahunty. Man, just don't. Thanks everyone for watching.
Okay. But the Side Kate thing, I don't know whether I agree or disagree. It may be interesting, I don't know. Anyway, this bottom of 3 Phoneybeetlemaniacxs, seeing Phoneybeetlemaniacxs make it true.
Meltdown expected, the weed is grown thin, engines start burning, but I have no fear, cause I'm in is drowning and I live by the river, London calling to the imitation zone. Forget it, brother, you can go it alone. London calling to the zombies of death, we're holding out.